Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome. So excited that everyone is joining us on this very special session that we have with Dr. Chris Seenan. He's a physiotherapist out of Glasgow, Scotland. He is the Global PAD Association's Global Walking Therapy Researcher of the Year. It's a mouthful. And he is just incredible. He helps people to walk, and grow those collateral vessels to reroute blood flow around blockages in their legs for a disease known as peripheral artery disease. It's a disease more prevalent and deadlier than most cancers combined. But guess what? There is so much you can do to prevent it and stall progression. You have the chance to take your health into your own hands and take steps to actually literally take steps to grow your own collateral network of vessels. And he is here to share with you how to do it, why to do it, and also he's here to help you keep your New Year's resolutions of your goals. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. Dr. Seenan, we appreciate you being here. I would love to start with you and how you communicate with your patients, how you motivate your patients to walk through that debilitating pain known as PAD so that they can improve their symptoms.
Yeah. And thank you very much for having me once again, and happy New Year to everyone. So that's a really good question. That bit of how do you get that motivation? So because I think everyone can get on board with the idea that walking is good. Exercise is good. Exercise helps, but that's almost not enough to help you do it. And so the things that the way I approach it is almost in with two things and two different bits in mind. One is, what's the purpose? What's your end goal? Because I think if you can kind of identify that reason for why you want to walk, or why you want to make this change in behavior and to walk more, that will help with that motivation. So it might be things like, oh well, I'm struggling to do X or Y. I'm not able to go to the walk around the shops with my grandchildren, or I'm not able to walk to catch the bus that I need to catch to get into work, or whatever it is. So that would be the goal. Can you identify what it is you want to change and what it is you want to be able to do? And then the second bit of it is, okay, that's the change you want to make happen, but how am I going to integrate this into my life? Because and as often as I think as all of us will know, New Year's resolutions are often the things that are most easily or quite frequently forgotten and broken and not adhered to. And that's the key thing about this walking with when you have peripheral arterial disease, is it needs to become a habit. It needs to become just normal routine in our everyday life, because the disease in itself, unfortunately, isn't going to go away. And so you have to keep doing the walking, and keep going with the exercise. So those are the two questions I ask. First of all, why do you want to do this? What are you wanting to achieve? And then you can really identify that goal that's going to help with the motivation. And the second bit is, how are you going to integrate this into your life? And that might be okay, so you want to do walking, how are you gonna cope when this doesn't work, or when it's raining outside, or when your life becomes busy, or this happens? How are you going to make sure you keep doing the walking? And that might be how putting in contingency plans and action plans. But so that's how I would approach it. That's the things I think about. But I would really be interested to hear from people actually with the condition, to see, well, what works for them, because I think what works for everyone might be slightly different. So I don't know if anyone on the call today would be keen to kind of chip in with how they approach it and what works for them.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Douglas. Douglas, what works for you to keep you motivated, get you walking and walking further, especially through that debilitating pain of PAD?
My number one goal this year would be to do a 5K a week, every week. I walk every day. I continue my walking every day, but my goal is to do a 5K a week for the simple reason I like my legs and I would like to keep them attached. And the only way I know how to do that, I've learned, is to walk, walk, walk. Now, if I can't walk outside, I'm walking indoors. I'm using paper plates on the floors. I'm finding ways to move my feet. So if I'm watching a movie, an hour and a half movie, I can move my feet for an hour and a half while I'm sitting on the couch. It's still something. I'm staying active. The whole point is to stay active. And my number one goal would be to do a 5K a week. And I think that's cool. Maybe by the end of the year, I could walk a 10K. It may take me a while, but I want to be able to accomplish those things this year.
I'm curious, Dr. Seenan's thoughts, because this isn't your typical PAD patient. And I think people who are watching right now, there might be some that might say, oh my gosh, he's a lot further than me. There's no way that I could do a 5K. That's not even realistic. Um, Everyone is at different levels. And Douglas, you're not walking these very fast. How long does it take you to complete a 5K?
I joined a walking group. So last summer we did 10 5Ks every Monday night. I was the last one to finish every time, but I finished. There was a couple of times that everybody was gone and it was just me and my walking partner, the guy that helped me walk. And we were the last ones to finish, but I finished. And I did a 5K, but I had to stop 2 or 3 times sometimes and rest, but I finished. The whole point is to finish, is to not give up. However long it takes me to walk, I'm going to finish that walk.
And Douglas, I'm curious because everyone wants to save their legs. It is important to walk to save your legs. But I mean, for a lot of people, it's not enough, surprisingly, to say, well, I want to walk to keep my legs.
I
There has
started
to be something more what goes through your head to get through that debilitating pain
My
to
journey
push through.
started 5 years ago, and you know this. I fell in a yard mowing a yard. I fell. I couldn't feel my legs. So it's taken me 5 years to get to this point of walking. I couldn't walk to the end of my trailer in the beginning. I couldn't walk to the mailbox. My neighbor had to get my mail because I couldn't walk to the mailbox. But the whole point is making progress. It's not perfection, it's progress. So it's taken me 5 years to get to this point to do a 5K, even though I finished last. It's taken 5 years of walking every day just to the end of the driveway. And then I made it to the neighbors, and then I made it to the next house. So it's what you tell us to do, doctor, is to continue to progress. It's building those collaterals by walking.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key point, and it's fantastic to hear your story. And it obviously takes a huge amount of motivation for yourself, and you are very motivated. And you're comparing yourself against yourself. And as you say, 5 years ago you weren't doing any sort of distances like this, but it's the way that you've. What's really nice is the sound of how you've recorded it and kind of noticing how far you were able to go, and then just looking to go a little bit further the next time or a little bit further. And it takes a long time, and it's not something that's going to get better all of a sudden or anything like that. But over time, you will notice the differences, and that's great to hear.
Is there anyone else? I think Pat wrote a little something in there. Pat, do you want to unmute and share your comment? I think Pat may be a little shy. You're welcome to unmute, but it looks like, let me see if I can pull it up here. Pat says, motivation is trying not to die. I mean, that's a powerful statement, Dr. Seenan. Just right there, before we get into the rest of Pat's comments, right there, motivation is trying not to die. Do you
Mhm.
find that that's enough for most people?
I do, and I think there is. I'm just
I
trying
mean,
to.
is it real enough for them? is it real enough for them, number one, but number two, you know, do they, at the point where they think they're going to die, if they think they can't walk any further, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
If I'm going to die anyway, I mean, will it really make a difference?
I know, and I think this is a difficult thing, and because everyone's journey is so different, and people often aren't experiencing PAD by itself, and they might have other issues, as you mentioned. I think that what's what's really useful, I think, is to realize the trajectory, the kind of the progression of the condition, and that this isn't something that any sort of intervention, walking or surgery or medications, there's nothing that's going to fix this. So there's nothing that takes the PAD away, that stops that process of atherosclerosis. All you can do is slow it down and slow down that progression and reduce your risk. And that's the key bit. And it's that understanding of risk. And that's maybe perhaps what you're tapping into, Pat, there, because I mean, a PAD doesn't mean you're necessarily going to die of PAD, but it increases your risk of dying of other things like heart attack or stroke or other cardiovascular conditions. And so, yeah, I think having that understanding and understanding that walking is one of the things you can do to help reduce that, but also at this whilst holding on to that, well, this is going to help, and also the understanding that it's not going to make this go away. And that's a difficult thing to understand. And I think a lot of the time that gets people down a huge amount. It's a very difficult thing to accept almost.
And that's the number one thing I hear. The moment that there is a chain of vascular centers that have paid Google a lot of money here in the US to be the top dog in any search about PAD on Google. And the first thing that comes up for everyone is their website that says, you've been diagnosed with PAD, you're dead in 5 years. And I think that's such a disservice. I wish that Google would push that down, because that's actually simply not true.
Yeah.
It is not true now, especially more than ever when people are being diagnosed sooner rather than later, number one. And number two, there are more treatments available. And number three, there's a greater push and education on walking as medicine so that patients have the tools they need to become better partners in care and improve their prognosis.
Yep. Yeah. I know that's it's really it's disheartening to hear that is the kind of the approach, and that kind of scare tactics almost being used. And obviously when you associate that with, if it is associated with kind of someone making money and associated with that fear that's created, that's really not nice to hear. But I think you're absolutely right. Um it's that the good thing is the focus on the education and the understanding and the kind of other things. The thing, there's so much that each one of us can do to help ourselves, and sort of getting that understanding and realization is really, really important.
Yep. And Kathy, what is your New Year's resolution, and how do you get motivated to to keep on walking through all of the comorbidities that seem to go along with PAD?
I think the first thing I'd say is my New Year resolution is to stay away from misinformation, like the thing you just said, because that is outrageous.
Good one.
And actually, it's funny you should say that, because I have noticed a rise in people joining and coming in states of panic.
Yes.
They're coming in panic. They can't sleep,
Yes.
terrified. And I'm thinking, well, where are they getting this? That explains a lot. Because it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. It's making it up. Yes, there's a risk, but there's a risk getting on the road. It's really snowy and icy here. Getting in a car is a big, big risk today, but people are doing it. We live with risk. It's about managing it. It really annoys me that responsible people will do this. And I think we need to start a sort of counteract. And one of the things I would say about New Year's resolution is I'm pretty determined not to let myself get carried away with negative thoughts and negative information, but to turn those negativity things to positives without going at them hammer and tongs, because that just exhausts people. I think thinking about fights and wars and battles and warriors is not great terminology. I think outwit the thing, outsmart the thing, outlive the thing, is what to do, and not to think you have to do it in some massive overnight change of many factors in your life, because people just get overwhelmed. They just can't deal with it. It's too much. They've got to give up smoking. They've got to cut out this. They've got to not eat sugar. They've got to eat healthy. They've got to walk. They've got to exercise. Your head would be absolutely nipping. You've just got to do it a little bit each day to try and improve the situation. And as each day, if you can do a little bit each day, then you will benefit the next day from the little bit you did the day before. Whether that's a bit of mental health, whether it's a bit of walking, whether it's a bit of exercise, whether it's a bit of relaxation, or better diet choices, or less cigarettes, or less alcohol. A little bit, a little bit, a little bit will add up, multiply up. So my New Year resolution is to stay away from bad news.
I love that. And Kathy, I'm wondering in our group, and this might be a separate conversation, I think it would be an incredible thread to start in both the UK groups and the US groups to say, please go out, scour the web, and let's find misinformation on PAD, and let's put together a list, and let's have doctors refute it live.
Yeah.
And have patients tell stories that demonstrate why that information is not true. So I'm giving that to you to own. I think that would be really interesting to do, and I appreciate you so much for your anger about this disinformation, because it shows how empowered you are with the right information that Dr. Seenan and his team present.
Well, I wasn't always, not because of the efforts made by Chris and his team, because unbeknownst to all of us, they were beavering away for years and years, producing studies which I never got to read, and no doctor ever told me about. I only discovered it because I became involved, and it was very reassuring. But it's a long, slow haul, and as Chris says, it isn't going to go away. And when I was diagnosed with heart disease, it was devastating. I was 45. I had a 10-year-old, and they said you might get 7 years.
Oh,
but I mean, it was pretty devastating.
Yeah.
But I got a life, a big life. The 10-year-old's now got 2 kids of his own. He'll be 40 next year. And I'm still here, and I'm still able to go out and walk with my grandchildren. And so I could have been waiting for death for the past near 30 years. Thank God I didn't. Thank God I didn't listen. Thank God I decided to get a life. So, I think it's really important that people don't get tied up in these negative messages. Of course, there is very difficult circumstances for people. I recognise that. Real dreadful, dreadful whammy on whammy on whammy. But you have to just pick yourself up and try go again.
I love it.
What else can you do?
Yep. And Dr. Seenan, what are your thoughts based on Kathy's? And then we'll go to Alan and Patty H, and maybe Janice wants to weigh in, and Douglas will get to you again as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting hearing your perspective, Kathy. And I think a couple of things I would pick up on that. I like the way that you talked there about the change, kind of how to make the changes, and it's this feeling I think often that people might get, that they have to make all these changes all at once and get completely overwhelmed, and therefore make none of the changes, and that's absolutely not the way to approach it. And it is, if you can do these incremental changes, a bit like Douglas's incremental increasing and walking, it's that those small changes over time add up to a really big change. And it's about, and it's a small change is way more important than a failed big change, if you know what I mean. So if you try and change something big, and you fail at it and you don't manage, that's a lot worse than actually just trying to do a little bit, which is much more realistic. I think that other bit about the information and about how things get out, that is a bit of our responsibility, I think, as healthcare professionals and as researchers as well. I think we need to take that, hear that message, and make changes because, as you say, we have been working for years and years on this, but we're not very good at talking at talking to other people. We're very good, I guess, at maybe talking to each other and sharing information and writing articles about it. But what we're not very good at is kind of sharing that wider with the wider community in terms of other healthcare professionals and informing and changing those messages. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be focusing on a lot more over the next year and into the future is about it's all well and good doing the research and knowing certain things about the condition, but if only you know that and not very many other people know that, then it doesn't make any difference. We need to get it out there. So it's about getting out and talking and like these opportunities where I get a fantastic opportunity to hear from all of you and understand your experience and life and it is so useful.
Thank you. And Alan, go ahead and unmute. Alan has an interesting perspective. You had a little bit of ebbs and flows with your experience in, being motivated and getting out there and exercise. Would you like to share your New Year's resolution and struggles you may have with motivation and what actually does motivate you?
Well, I didn't officially make a New Year's resolution, but I did resolve to try to work hard over the next 3 months to improve my condition.
Hmm?
And my motivation is that I'm really tired of walking for 2 or 3 blocks and then having to sit down for 5 minutes and doing that, repeating that over and over. Yesterday I had a good day. I walked 3.4 kilometers and I only stopped 3 times for the first half of it. And then I was able to complete the second half of it, I'll say a third of it, without stopping. And that's the first time in a while that I've been able to do that. So that was progress. But I do have a question. If I focus really hard over, let's say, 3 months, and if my condition doesn't improve, is that the point that I go to the doctor and talk to him about surgery? Like how long do you go before you start looking at that route?
I think that's a great question, Dr. Seenan. And I think that it'd be great to also address that, the standard for these walking programs for improvement has been three months. But it's not just about saying, I'm just going to go out and walk. There's a certain way you need to walk before you go to the doctor and you say, okay, it's not working for me. Because just doing a meander is not going to work. It's about treating your walking regimen each day as if you're in the gym pumping iron. You're really working out. And that's what it takes to improve it, right, Dr. Seenan?
Yes, it does, and that is important. And I think the other thing I would mention there, I guess, is to consider what we call improvement. Because I think if you consider and you appreciate that peripheral arterial disease is a progressive condition. So if you did nothing, this condition, your experience, your walking distance would get worse over time, just because the atherosclerosis, the process kind of continues in the background. So actually, if you do 3 months of walking and you can walk as far as you can, as far as you did at the end of 3 months as you did on the first month, then actually I would consider that an improvement. Because what you've done is by doing that walking, or perhaps the other things you're doing, you've halted the progression of the disease. Do you know, in that way? So you've stopped it from getting worse. So no change equals improvement. So it is to kind of consider that. In terms the other bit of your question, I guess, in relation to the surgery, is probably a bit more complex and very much individual, because I think the way that I understand it, and I'm not a vascular surgeon, and I'm not involved in these decisions in relation to when someone requires surgery or not, but my understanding of it is that it depends on the person, it depends on the lifestyle, it depends on how the disease is affecting that individual. So if the fact that, because there might be one person who can walk for 50 meters or 50 yards, and there's another person who can walk for 300 yards, but the person who can walk for 300 yards is more gets surgery, and the person that walks for 50 yards doesn't. And that is because that person who can walk for 300 yards 300 wasn't enough, or was causing such impact on their life that it was unsustainable, and then they needed an intervention for it, and it might have been for other reasons as well. Whereas the person who's able to walk for 50 yards is managing fine and managing their condition, and can and does not require the risk, that because obviously surgery includes risk when you go for that. So what I wouldn't like to kind of suggest a time frame or a lack of improvement or anything in relation to when you should consider surgery. That needs to be an individual decision based between you, your physician, and everything else that's going on in your life. But I think going back to my original point is that don't be disheartened with a lack of improvement, because staying the same, I would consider improvement. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay.
And we have, let's see, who else is here that we can call on? I'm not sure if Guy is here. Is Guy here and wants to comment or ask a question? We have an iPhone 5 and see if he wants to do. How about Janice? Janice, do you want to unmute and share your New Year's resolution and what motivates you, or where you struggle with motivation?
Yeah, I'm going to have to say that I struggle. I have been sick since before Christmas with a cough and then the stomach thing. So my motivation has been in the toilet, because I'm just very weak and have a cough and shortness of breath, because I got COPD too. So I'm not the best one for motivation, but I really liked what Dr. Seenan said about, like, not getting worse is improvement. So when I went to my vascular surgeon, which he immediately wanted to do surgery. That was like, he just rattled off about 7 surgeries. And I'm just like, whoa, my first time ever going to him. So that was like freaky after going through leukemia and all this other stuff. I'm like, is there anything I can do? And he's like, yeah, you can walk. And I'm like, okay. So here we go. And
There's
then
a whole bunch of surgeries versus, well, yeah,
walking.
now ask. You can
Yeah.
walk.
Yeah. So walking seems a lot better to me. It's just, and I live by the beach, so I really have no reason to not, but I guess just all my other comorbidities make me, I don't know. And now it's cold. I mean, it's not really that cold. It's cold. It's 33 degrees, so that's cold. So I really, I mean, I could go to the beach and I could walk, but 33 degrees is cold in the beach. So, but I'm going to try. I really am going to try, once I get rid of this cold that I have, which I guess is like hanging on for a lot of people. Then I'm definitely gonna start walking. My walking is going to Walmart with a grocery cart, which works, right? Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
That's really good. And I think that's what I mean in terms of when I said at the start about planning and making contingencies. Because as you say, when you're not feeling great, which happens for all of us, or if the weather is not so good, how can you manage to maintain or kind of keep going with your walking, and going to Walmart with the shopping cart, or whatever other way? That's brilliant, because what you're doing there is you're making plans, you're making contingencies and coping
Mhm.
when because things don't always go to plan. Things aren't always easy, and as you say, you've got other things, other conditions you have to consider, which make what you need to do even trickier.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I think that that's really important. I appreciate you so much, Janice, for your courage to speak up, because I think you represent a lot of patients out there that do have these multiple comorbidities. We have a lot of patients in our network for the Global PAD Association who do have COPD and other issues, respiratory issues with their lungs, which make it a little bit more difficult to push it with their legs. And I'm curious from Dr. Seenan's standpoint as to how you get someone who does have issues with their respiratory system to push it with their legs enough to grow the collateral vessels to an extent where they're going to experience the relief they need to delay or completely postpone any sort of surgery.
Yeah, it's a big, sorry, it's a big question. There's not
Yes.
an easy answer to that, I
No,
guess.
I
And
figured
it
it's
is,
loaded.
yeah, it's quite, and it will be, and again, it's just different for each different individual. And because, as I mentioned there in response to Alan's question, um, that decision for surgery is complex and complicated in itself. And so there isn't almost one prescription or one type of thing that works. I think what it is about finding the thing that works for you. And the what we do have is the kind of a rough set of guidelines, which is the things like walking into pain. So walking, when you walk, try to push yourself at least into pain, and to do that at least 3 times a week for at least 30 minutes. These types of but these again are quite rough, general kind of recommendations. What I was going to share is we have, and I'm not sure if a wee while ago, and I'll post it in the chat here, but we created an infographic about how to do exercise and intermittent claudication. This was based on the kind of most recent evidence at that time. So this was back in, I think, 2018 or 2019. So I've posted it in the chat there. But what that does is that summarizes the recommendations. So kind of provides a kind of an easier way to kind of yeah, to describe what it is. And yeah, sorry if that's come across quite small. I can send a full copy of that. But that we publish that in a journal. But we also a lot of the kind of doctor surgeries and other places and gyms kind of have this up on the wall in the UK to kind of help provide a recommendations for exercise. So I will send a proper version of that around.
Yeah, we would love
Um,
permission to post it on our website as well, with
yeah,
giving you guys the credit, if you don't mind, because this
no,
is absolutely spectacular. We love it.
yeah, no, that's
So,
absolutely fine. I and I guess the thing I was following that up with was we talk a lot about walking, but as Douglas mentioned earlier, walking's not the only way. It's there's many other ways. And I see some, I think was it Pat in the chat is asking, is there anything else we can do? What other things are you able to do? And absolutely, it doesn't have to be walking exercise. It can be cycling, it can be swimming, it can be, doing the exercise as you're sitting in your seat. But and then it's the other thing to add to all this is it's you can control your other risk factors, which help as well. And so that's as we've mentioned, it's um the many things you're asked to try and control or reduce, like smoking, for example, or stress, or alcohol intake, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, the all of these things, your diabetes, your blood sugar, if you have diabetes as well. If you can try and make a little change on each one of these things, it becomes cumulative or additive. It all adds together. So if you're walking a little bit, but also, I don't know, reducing your smoking a bit, if taking less alcohol, whatever it is, if you do all these different things, you should notice even more of a difference.
I have a thought, please.
Yes.
Doctor, listening to what we're talking about is we discuss a lot. I feel we need to discuss the mental health side of this aspect in what we're talking about now, because I had open heart surgery 2 years ago. I have COPD also. And the mental health aspect of going to bed every night thinking that I'm going to die or I'm going to lose my leg is something that, we're human beings, and it's hard not to get that out of our head sometimes. And the motivation part is when I go to bed at night thinking I made one extra step today, better than going to bed at night going, I sat on the couch all day and just worried about what's going to happen to me. Even if I get up and walk 4 steps to the end of the couch, that's better than not doing nothing at all. So the mental health aspects of what we all go through with with the insanity of the disease, and staying off of Google and trying to be positive when I'm 62 and I'm nowhere near, I'm retired now. So it's like, this is not what retirement's supposed to look like. I'm supposed to be on the beach in the Bahamas with an umbrella having a good time. But yet I can't walk to the end of the driveway, you know? So the mental health aspect of what you talk to your patients about, and what we all need to realize. And I want to share just one quick thing. Think everybody in here needs to think about all the things we've been through in our lives, and we're still here. All the different things and aspects of what life brings us. And this is just something else for us to conquer one step at a time.
Very motivational, Douglas. Thank you so much. Your story is always motivational, and sometimes when people see your post, they might think, and your goals, they might think, well, he's doing so much better than me, and he doesn't struggle. You struggle every single day, but you keep pushing it, and you're committed to being here. You're committed to making progress on your own, and I think that's amazing. And we have Marie here, and I think that we touched on something as well. I don't know if she wants to share her New Year's resolution and where she struggles, because Marie, I think that she's in our live studio audience. I think a lot of people probably can relate to you, and you can help so many people by sharing. And she says mentally she's broke, and she says she feels as bad as the disease itself, mentally to physically. And she asks Dr. Seenan, for some motivation and a little advice. What if you've tried the walking and it seems nothing helps? It just seems the same old song and dance. What do you try at that point?
Yeah, it's really difficult, and I think that it's something really important to acknowledge, as Douglas is saying, as Marie's saying, that the impact, the toll that the disease has, and the experience of the disease, the daily pain, the daily restriction, the fear, as we've touched upon a few times today, and almost I think what I hear a lot of times is that the sense of powerlessness that people feel, and what I mean by that is that they feel there's nothing they can do, that this is, that to make this better, or even that all the things they can do aren't going to make that much difference, and the futility, or the how frustrated they are with that. And so it's really important to acknowledge that that is how a lot of people feel, and a lot of people experience, and that is, there's no getting away from that, or no making that better necessarily, apart from to acknowledge and to discuss it. In terms of what you can do and how you can help those feelings, this might sound a bit glib, or not particularly useful, but I think that, again, exercise, as well as having cardiovascular benefits, doing any activity, getting outside, or changing your kind of your background, or your, in terms of where you are, can have huge mental health benefits. So that's one of the things that exercise is best for. So it's actually almost better for feeling good during that release of endorphins, which help you feel more positive. So exercise can help when you're feeling not great in general. Is one of the things I would say. The other aspect of it, and it relates to these incremental changes, is one of the things that can really help to, when you feel everything's a bit futile, is to try and notice the things that are changing, or appreciate the improvements, or or that you can see. And so that might be a case of, when you are doing your exercise, or when you are just kind of living your life day to day, notice any differences, any changes. So if you are walking, the changes might be really small, but if you measure yourself carefully, so like going back to what Douglas was saying in terms of if you notice how far are you able to go and kind of record that in some way, and it might be steps you're taking per day, it might be how far you get on a treadmill, it might be what you can do kind of at the gym. But if you can try to notice that it's either not changing or getting slightly better, then that you can notice those positive things and give yourself the positive messages.
And Sue, who's on YouTube, brings up a really good point. Her right leg is clotted all over after a cleaning a week ago. Walking is number one, the best medicine. Any procedure, all procedures, whether it's endovascular, meaning using wires and balloons to go in, and even a roto-rooting device to clean out some of that plaque, and then they place a stent in some cases, all the way through to an endarterectomy where they physically or manually scrape out the plaque, or a bypass to where they surgically reroute blood flow using a vein or a graft. Those are all temporary. Every one of these procedures, they're not a cure. They're not durable. One may be more durable than the other, but the purpose of any one of these procedures, if you want a procedure and you want a quick fix, you must know that it is not a cure. It is not durable. And the only point in having a procedure, there are two reasons. Number one, to heal a wound. Number two, it's to relieve symptoms. So heal a wound and relieve symptoms so that you can actually get out on your feet and walk further and faster to grow your collateral network of vessels, those natural bypasses that you have, the little miracles in your body. The goal is to build those, because it's not a matter of if those procedures are going to fail, it's a matter of when. And the purpose is that it's giving you time to grow your network of vessels, your natural bypasses, so that when it fails, when your stents occlude, when your graft occludes, you're not going to need a revolving door procedures, because it doesn't matter that those arteries are blocked. You've been able to walk to grow your own bypasses so that you just don't even need those arteries. Am I on point?
Absolutely. Sorry, I kind of mute. Yes, absolutely. I think that is a really important thing to acknowledge, is that these procedures, whatever the procedure are, is just a kind of a facilitation, a way of kind of opening up a little bit to allow you to do something else. It's not the end goal. It will not, as you say, that does generally. It's a way that, yeah, just helps you manage to do something else, and that's something else being the exercise, being the walking, being the other risk
And
management.
it's amazing that we have Linda who's here, and in comments, I don't know if Linda, you want to say it, but it's so inspirational. She says she's not very active in, our group, but she reads everyone's comments. And, before finding the group, she was full of fear due to Dr. Google that we talked about early on. But so many of the comments are uplifting and inspirational. Things like this seminar and what you're saying, Dr. Seenan, she says she'll be forever grateful that she's now living again. Yes, there's pain every day, but she keeps pushing every single day through that pain, taking her health into her own hands. And she's excited to hear that she's not going to die in 5 years. One of those pieces of misinformation on Dr. Google, that is not the case. There's so much you can do to improve your prognosis. So thank you so much, Linda, for sharing. And I think we have Sid who's here. Sid, I'm going to call on you. Sid, what is your New Year's resolution, and where are you struggling? Where are you motivated? How can Dr. Seenan help? There
Can
you
you hear
go.
me? Can
Oh,
you
we
hear
can
me?
hear you now. Great to see you,
Okay.
Sid.
You too, Kim. Right now, my wife and I are in Disney. We come here every year for vacation for about 3 or 4 weeks. So let me tell you a little story. 2 years ago, when I had a bypass operation in my right leg and in my groin, and the one on my right leg below the knee to above the knee did not work. And when my wife was in a waiting room, talked to the surgeon after the surgery, she said he was telling her about the operation, and she said, "What's next?" He said, "Amputation of my right leg." So last year when we came to Disney, I was walking about 100 to 200 feet in a wheelchair 80 and 90% of the time. I'm sorry, 2 years ago that was. When I got back after vacation, I ran into UChem or your website, and I started the walking program. Well, today is our 5th day here, and we averaged between a low of 6 to a high of 10 miles each day. I'm not saying it was painless, but it was bearable. Um, it's unbelievable, just the progress we made. And I just heard Douglas's comments about going to bed at night. You know, 2 years ago when I went to bed at night, I almost cried myself to sleep because I was going to lose a leg. And now things are a little different. I still get some pain around my ankles sometimes, but I have 3 doctors now that I see: one surgeon, one interventional radiologist, and one interventional cardiologist. Um, so, and I see them once a year, and I just get their opinion. I get ultrasound done on both my legs twice a year. So each doctor sees that. Kim, the last doctor was one you recommended, Mark Garcia, I believe it was his name.
Yeah,
And I
he's
met
right
with,
there close to you in Delaware, right?
yeah, he's in Delaware, and he comes to within 3 miles of my house once a month. That's all he's in Delaware, and Lewis, Delaware is once a month. So I seen him for the first time last month. Seemed like a real nice fellow. We had a good, he spent over an hour with my wife and myself just talking, which is unusual. Now, these guys only want to spend 10 or 15 minutes, but whatever Medicare will pay, you know. But, I like the guy. Uh, he totally agree with what everybody else says that, hey, let's keep on doing what we're doing, And, sometimes I get some pains worse than others. I think, maybe I'll try to go in and clear some of this out, but um, I don't think it's necessary yet because, yeah. And the other thing we're doing, we're staying on the 5th floor, and naturally there's elevators, but twice a day, my wife and I are taking the steps, walking up the steps, and I can feel that. I mean, it kicks my ass, but excuse me, but we can make it. But I want to thank you again for all you've done, and I love listening to Dr. Phillips. I love listening to Douglas, and everybody that's helped you along this journey. They've been great for me. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Sid, for sharing your story. I mean, that's incredible. I would love to hear Dr. Seenan's thoughts. I mean, we just had another patient that came to us just on Saturday that she ultimately did have a procedure that tried to open up the arteries, and of course they closed right away. But the whole agreement that she made with the doctor was that if he does a procedure to try and open up those arteries, that she was aware it was going to close and that she was going to do her part and walk, walk, walk. And so she did, and she was so proud of herself. She went from literally walking 2 minutes,
Mm.
Dr. Seenan, to 25 minutes in less than 3 months. And she does her rebounder. She claims her rebounder actually helps her a lot. It's helped, she said, to improve her walking distance. But on the rebounder, she's gone from 4 minutes to 14 minutes, and she feels great. So she goes back into the doctor that she originally went to, who said amputation, before we got her the second opinion from someone who would just open things up. He said amputation. She went back to him. She's feeling great because she's like, hey, I just want to share with you, I don't need an amputation. I did get a little clean out, but I think my walking is what's doing the job for me. And he says, oh, your arteries are still blocked. You're still going to need amputation. And said, you're delusional to think that opening up these vessels at all was even, or walking is going to make a difference for you. And it was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, way to demotivate, get
Right.
your ego in the way. Because here she was, just like you, Sid, on the verge of amputation, told amputation, but yet at that point, you and her were able to walk your way into keeping your legs.
Mhm. Kim, we buy annual tickets to the parks at Disney, all the parks, Epcot, Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios. And we go in the parks just to walk, because there's, you can walk miles and miles down here and see a lot, so it's been, we've had this thing at Disney for almost 20 years. We've been coming here. So, I thought it was going to end 2 years ago, but we're able to keep up with it. And there's fitness centers here that we go to. And,
That's brilliant.
yeah.
It's so interesting to hear, Sid, your story, and very inspirational. And I think that, especially that your talk about the stairs, that kind of epitomizes what I talk about in terms of making things a habit. And it's these tiny choices, these really small things, small decisions, but they'll be making a huge difference. Going up 5 flights of stairs is incredible. That's huge. And as you say, it'll be incredibly sore. But the fact that you're doing that, well, each time you do that, you've got to say, well, it's another one in the bank, another kind of step in the right direction towards what you're trying to achieve. And I'm great that it's really heartening to hear that it's had an impact for you. I think for everyone it might be slightly different. You might see the similar changes or not, but it's brilliant to hear your story.
Well, and when I'm at home, I'm on 90% of my walking's on a treadmill. And down here, not that there's huge hills, but there's inclines, and I can feel it. And I work through it. But it looks like everything's flat here, but it's not. There's a share of little hills and steps and stuff. Yeah.
That's amazing. And
Kim,
for those, we have
Kim,
a
I want you to meet
question.
my wife.
Oh yeah, we'd love to meet your wife. Where is she?
She's right here.
She's got to squeeze on
Hi,
in there.
Kim.
There
Sandy.
you are.
Hi, you have done a wonderful job for my husband. Thank you so much.
Oh, I appreciate you've been a great support system for him because, as you know, walking becomes a full-time job, right? With PAD, once you
Yes.
get to a point, you just have to realize it's a full-time job, and to have the support of the people around you, and especially the people around you that are normal, right, Dr. Seenan, that can walk faster, but you need someone that's going to be with you, that's going to walk at your pace and grow with you over time and be with you every step of the way. And so for you, I mean, that's amazing that you're doing that with him. And isn't it incredible that back then you couldn't walk more than one or 200 feet before you'd have to sit? I mean, how boring was that for you?
And she was the one that heard the next thing's the amputation. I was still in the recovery room when that was said.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked. And the surgeon is a friend of ours. And I was by myself. My daughter had just left. And I just sat there in shock. So, I mean, but he just went through a 7-hour operation, which was supposed to be 3. So anyway, he's good now. He's working hard. He walks every day. Not one day passes that he doesn't. So I'm proud of him.
Through, even if he has a cold or anything like that,
yes.
he still pushes.
He still does his walking. Yes.
How do you push through that? How do you prepare yourself mentally for, I mean, when I'm sick, don't bother me. I have the covers over my head and I'm not going anywhere.
Well, fortunately, he's not really been that sick. So yeah, so we're happy about that. But thank you again. Thank you for all of your support. He listens to you just about every day.
Oh,
So,
good.
Yes.
And I think Douglas wants to jump in, and I don't know if he has it. You have a question for Sid and his wife?
Right. Yes.
Douglas? He's got to unmute.
Okay.
He's trying to unmute. He's not
Did it
there. Yes.
unmute?
Yeah,
Yes, it
yeah,
did.
Douglas, how are you?
What's up, bud? Say hello to Minnie for me. I miss her. So say hello to Minnie. But when you started 2 years ago to where you are today, you mentioned the roller coaster ride. Has it just continually improved at each step and each day that you've taken?
Yes, it has. I started on the treadmill at just under 2 mile an hour. Now I'm just under 3 mile an hour, and my amount of time I spent on there before I take a break is much longer than what it used to be. And I'm challenged just by that, just by watching the length of time I'm on there and the speed that I'm walking. And I've lost some weight too, which has helped.
And that goes to Kim, that question I had for Dr. Sheehan about Dr. Sheehan. I talked to a friend of mine. He's in the program, but he's working 712s, and it's hard for him to get out and walk. But
Right.
he works, and the question is, if you can't do that, continually walking to get into that collateral state. He walks probably 20, 30,000 steps a day, but it's within a like 200 step distance, like in a shop area. How does that, will that actually help improve collaterals, or do you have to do the walking part where you get to that stage where you feel the pain and you walk through it? That makes sense?
It does. And I think this is a key question. I don't think we really know enough to be able to say decisively one way or the other. So in general, like the best evidence we have at the moment is that walking into pain is the thing that help, and that makes the difference. But there are now studies that are coming out where we're doing exercise programs where people aren't walking into quite as much pain and they still have a beneficial effect. So I think that in terms of building the collaterals, that probably the jury's still out in terms of whether or not, what is the right recipe for the development of collateral, or is there actually a one recipe, or is it perhaps that any type of exercise, any type of walking, as long as you're kind of like pushing enough, or trying to kind of walk it, make your muscles do the work they need to do, then it makes a difference. So I'm sorry, again, that's a bit of a.
But that's why we have our walking program where, right, Kim, where you can join our walking program, and it's a helpful process that we help you and we help guide you, and we can give you that motivation to keep walking and to walk past that pain, take that next step, right, Kim?
It is, and it's a free remote walking program, which I haven't. I'm not sure if Dr. Seenan has downloaded it yet to give us any feedback and how we can improve on it. But we made it incredibly primitive. It was designed by patients for patients to make it as simple as possible to follow, and it's the only one out there that actually truly tracks claudication and allows you to independently track the claudication time. And, patients tell us that they're improving because now they can actually see what they're doing. And it gives them a little extra motivation that when they click the button pain, from that point, they're going to walk, walk, walk. And some of them tell me that they walk even faster at that point to push through to the point where that pain gets so bad that they feel like they need to rest and then continue walking again. But Dr. Seenan, I know we've talked about doing studies to see if something like this, even something so simple as just this remote app coupled with community, peer support and motivation, and frequent live Q&As such as this, where they can in real time ask the questions that they're struggling with to maintain their program. That how it would help people and how it would improve their prognosis versus just saying go home and walk, 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 or just doing a set program for 3 months I mean,
Mhm.
what is it that's going to help them to get past that 3-month set program or the supervised exercise therapy where they're going on a treadmill? What's going to make them continue that at home? Because
Yeah.
it's not just 3 months that changes your life unless it becomes a habit.
Yeah. And I think that's it. And I think the walking program is fantastic. And as for all the reasons you just mentioned there, it's that the mixture of the tracking and the motivation to do it with the alerts and the reminders, but then also the community and the support that you get from just share, as we've seen even this afternoon or today, with the sharing of experience and realizing that you're not the only one feeling what you're feeling, or getting advice from others who are living the same life that you are, and experiencing the same condition. I think that all of these things together help to provide that support, as you say, that encourages the long-term change, the habit change that makes the difference.
Yeah. And do you have just a couple minutes? I know Marcia just joined in. She has a question for you.
Yeah.
Marcia, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm sorry I caught the tail end of this. I was at another meeting, actually. I have a question. I'm facing an amputation of my great right toe. And so my question is, how does a person rearrange their walking? Because in my case, the pain isn't so much collateral like cramping as it is this the infection in my toe right now. And so how do you go about gauging your walking at this point? I realize I'm going to have to go through a little bit of readjusting my balance and things like that. I'm not too worried about that, but like, how do you get through that pain to get more focused on the collateral blood flow?
Mm. And are you asking, Marcia, sorry, how do you walk now before the amputation or after, or a bit of both?
Well, kind of both. I mean, my gait has been adjusted for the
Mm.
past 2 years, walking not favoring my great right toe. So, and plus I practice Tai Chi and Qigong, so I'm not really too concerned with the balance, but it's again getting through the pain that isn't so much caused by collateral blood flow.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can see that's it's quite a unique challenge, or a difficult challenge regardless, as you say, because it's this pain from a different source, but it's associated, and it's similar to those. I think I've talked to others before who might have, for example, arthritis of the knee, or perhaps back pain, or COPD, as Janice was talking about earlier, and having these other things that complicate the experience of walking and doing the exercise. I think that it's probably, and I feel I've said this a lot today, and I promise it's not a cop out, but it's it it depends on you and what works for you and what your normal routine is. Because I could suggest, maybe doing like different types of exercises and doing some strengthening work perhaps in your legs to avoid, which you might be able to do using like a TheraBand or other things like that. A resistance band might be useful, but I would only recommend that if that worked for you, and if that was useful and something that you were likely to kind of adhere to. Um, so I don't know if I'm sorry not to have a better cohesive answer.
Well, thank you. I think some of this is intuitive on the part of the patient
Yeah.
as we learn to listen to our bodies. And
Yeah.
so I think I'm on the right road. It's just a question that's been on my mind a lot.
And
Yeah.
Marcia, you're always on the right, road. You're very motivated, and even when you're not motivated, you have the intention of being motivated and doing what you need to do to get back on your feet. We do have a lot of, members of our network who end up with an amputation and use it as, and I don't be insulted by this, but it is still an excuse not to exercise, an excuse not to walk. And I think it's not your fault as a patient. I don't think it's your fault. It's that you're not getting the guidance that you need from those doctors who are performing the amputation that actually don't know themselves. They aren't taught in school how you are to exercise and how you are to continue walking or get back to walking sooner rather than later. That's where doctors like Dr. Chris Seenan come in and other physiotherapists. And you as a patient, you need to say to your doctor, hey, you did the amputation. I need PT, and I need PT bedside. I want PT bedside while I'm still inpatient so that you can start the process of getting me moving, even if it's just in bed, even if it's just my stump, even if it's just the toes on my other leg. Get me moving. Show me the way. I'm motivated and I want to keep the rest of my leg and I want to keep my life, because so many patients who end up with not a toe amputation, but a major amputation, that they end up in bed and they're completely immobile. And so they're not getting a cardiovascular workout for their heart. Tell your doctor, get me a hand cycle. Get the foot cycle, use it for your hands and get that that heart rate up using your hands. Your hands aren't removed. Use your hands to still get that cardiovascular workout. Right, Dr. Seenan?
Absolutely. And I think that is that key point. Remember, walking and exercise isn't just for your legs, and it isn't just, you know, to be focused on a certain part of the body. The benefits of exercises are general and systemic. And so, as you say, if you can't move your leg, if you're or your toes for a certain period of time, keep moving in other ways or find other ways to get your heart pumping.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Dr. Seenan. We really appreciate you being here, and you've generously gone over the time, over the hour that we spend. You are coming back next week. Is it going to be 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock your time? I think this time I tricked you, and I think we did an hour earlier than we normally do.
No, this time is absolutely fine for me next week as well. So yeah, at 4 o'clock is grand. It is 4 o'clock UK time today.
Fantastic. And it's 8 o'clock a.m. Pacific time here. And it's 10 a.m. Central time and 11 a.m. Eastern. So, make sure to mark down that time. Join us next week. We still have quite a few questions that I know are coming in online and through here. And so I'm going to mark them all down. And if you don't mind, if we can run through them next week.
That'd be
Also,
great.
next week, what I'd like everyone to think about, everyone who's joining, everyone who plans to join, there are a lot of people that are going to review this afterwards and may join us live versus watching the replay this week. I want you to come prepared with what are the things that we need if we're going to do a 2-hour seminar on walking and exercise as medicine to prevent and stall progression of PAD. What are the key things that we need to cover? Even things that you already know, maybe things that have helped you. Come with those ready to share with us so that we can start marking them down. I think a great brainstorming session next week would be really fun. And it would also offer some key tips and tricks live for those who are tuning in to apply those to help them in their walking regimen. So, any other final words, Dr. Seenan?
No, for me, just thank you all so much for your time and questions. It's always